Right now, we are going to meet a candidate for the 63rd House seat, Republican nomination. Matt Hall is his name. Matt, it's nice to meet you. Good morning.
Great to meet you, too. A pleasure to be here.
So, we don't know a whole lot about you yet. Where are you from, first of all?
Well, I live in Emmett Township. Before that, I lived in Kalamazoo County for 8 years.
Okay.
I'm a constitutional law attorney. I was Donald Trump's chairman for the campaign for Calhoun County and much of West Michigan, and I was his delegate to the Republican National Convention where I fought for him on the floor in Cleveland. I was the one who made the motion to secure the nomination from Donald Trump and stop the Never-Trumpers from taking the nomination there in Cleveland.
Oh, wow. Quite an honor. So I take it then you've been able to actually meet the president.
I have. I met Donald Trump, and he thanked me for what I did, and he, right before the election when he came in, I told him he was going to win. I knew we would win if we worked hard and we band together, but unfortunately there are people like David Maturen who abandoned him right before the election. He went on a much lower rated program than this. This is a great program. It's like the highest rated. But he went on another station and he trashed President Trump and said he couldn't vote for him in good conscience, and that was wrong. We stuck together and we won the election, and there's a lot more support for Donald Trump in this area than you might think.
Well, obviously a lot of people voted for him. And just point of clarification, the Republican primary for the 63rd House seat will have you running against incumbent David Maturen for that seat. Whoever wins that runoff, 6 weeks from tomorrow? Right?
That's right, 6 weeks from tomorrow.
So whoever wins that then will take on a Democrat challenger in the fall?
Correct.
And how many of those have we got running in the primary?
There's one Democrat.
Just one. So whoever wins this pretty much will get the nomination and go head-to-head with that other person in November. Well, you kind of laid out where you're coming from, your affiliation with the Trump campaign and support for the president, a constitutional lawyer. How does that translate to state politics? What do you hope to accomplish if you get sent to Lansing as the 63rd District Representative?
The reason I'm running is because David Maturen was ranked the second most liberal Republican in Lansing. He has like a 67% with the American Conservative Union, and that's a failing score. And then I looked at his, NRA rating at C+ and dropping because he voted no on constitutional carry. He voted for taxpayer-funded abortion when he was a Kalamazoo County Commissioner. He was part of this gang of 12 of alleged Republicans who voted no on cutting income taxes. I mean, even the wimpy Republicans in Washington will cut income taxes. So what I want to do is I want to fight for our conservative platform. When I was a delegate representing Calhoun County in Cleveland, I voted for our conservative platform. And I did not do that so other Republicans could come and run as conservative and vote like Democrats. And that's why I'm running.
Mm-hmm. What would you say are the top things that we could do better as a state government for people of Michigan?
Well, number one, we need to reform auto insurance. And I was listening to your show where Representative Maturen was trying to basically confuse the listeners about this issue. It's very simple. If David Maturen would have voted yes on auto insurance reform, immediately we would have seen a 10% reduction in our cost right away. Now,
statewide or for
yes.
people here in Battle Creek?
People here in Battle Creek. Everyone would have seen 10% reduction. Where you start getting into this funny situation is, well, if you're in Detroit and you're paying $5,000, then 10% is more, right? I mean, that's more than if you're paying $2,500. But the fact is you still would have saved 10%. Secondly, if you look at it, the choice for many people is not between unlimited lifetime catastrophic benefits and a $500,000 or $250,000 plan. For like 20-some%, they're not even insured. So the option is, do we give them what would have been a 40% or a 20% cut, depending on their plan, and get them insured or not? Because right now, when they're not insured, who's paying for that?
You and me, I would guess.
Exactly, and the hospitals may have to eat that cost in many cases. So what we needed to do is get people insured, and the way to do that is to offer more plans, more choices, and at a lower cost. And that bill would have done that, and Dave voted no, and that was wrong. Maturen should have voted yes. I would have voted yes. And because of that, we're paying, at a minimum, 10% more today, and that's wrong.
Yeah, and it still hasn't been fixed, and they're still debating how it should be fixed, and we have no idea when we'll see reform. But we do pay, I don't know, maybe the highest of any state, or probably in the top 5.
It is the highest. It is absolutely the highest, and it's for the best plan, right? And that's why we need to offer more plans. I think it's totally responsible to choose the unlimited lifetime catastrophic benefits. But if you can't afford that, there should be other plans. And there was a bill to do it, and Maturen voted no, and that was wrong.
The Michigan, even though it has the highest, it also has this catastrophic part of, so that if you're in an accident and you're paralyzed for life and you need care for life, we give that to you. Now, where do you stand on that? Is that something we can't afford to do anymore, or do we keep that, or how do we keep it? Where does that fit in with Matt Hall's idea of what we should have?
Well, like I said, I would have voted yes on the auto insurance reform bill that Maturen voted no on, and that preserved our unlimited fund. But it was a choice, and that's a very expensive plan, and that's why if you selected that choice, you only would have saved 10% on what you're doing now. There's no way that I can foresee to have a huge change in the price unless you eliminate that unlimited fund. If you go to a cap like $2 million like other states do, then you could really push reform. I support keeping that as an option, and that means it would be 10% less. But you could also have other choices, and some people will choose to insure different plans. Maybe they want $1 million, maybe they want $500,000, and I think they should be allowed to have choices that therefore they can choose for the best coverage that they can afford.
So what happens if somebody chooses the lowest plan that maybe doesn't include a catastrophic coverage, and then they're in a motorcycle accident and maimed for life and need care just to stay alive? What happens?
Well, number one, like I said, right now that person is probably not insured.
Probably, yeah. So
the same thing would happen. I mean, they go on to probably Medicaid or something like that, and it gets covered differently. And maybe, but other states, every other state in the country has solved this issue, and we're the only state that only allows you to have an unlimited lifetime catastrophic fund.
So auto insurance reform is near the top of the list, if not the top. What else could we do a better job of in our state government?
Well, one thing I want to point out is David Maturen voted no on making English our official language. I think that's wrong. I think we need to stand now more than ever for our histories, our traditions, and our Judeo-Christian values. And when we can't get a Republican to vote for English as our official language because of political correctness, something's wrong. And so I'd like to see us stand up for our history, our traditions, our Judeo-Christian values. And then, we need to fix the roads. I mean, what we're seeing right now is not working. And, Dave Maturen voted for the gas tax increase, and he voted for the 40% vehicle registration fee increase. And it ended up only being 20, but he wanted 40. And this is not working. I mean, the money is not being fully dedicated to the roads. And we need to dedicate as much of that money as we can constitutionally to the roads, all of it. And most states do that.
So where are we going to get that money if we don't raise taxes?
Well, number one, there's a portion, the sales tax that's charged on gasoline that is not going to roads. And so it's like the biggest part of the gas tax is not going to roads because it is the sales tax. It goes elsewhere. And so when you look at Michigan, it's like a top 5 state for amount of money that we tax for roads. And it's like at the bottom. It's like 50th for amount of gas tax invested in roads. And so we need to dedicate all of that we can to the roads.
So you would support legislation that would divert that gas tax money from where it may be going now, such as the general fund, specifically for road improvements.
Exactly. And, the priorities of government funding really should be roads, public safety, and education. Mm-hmm. Let's fund those things first. Let's dedicate money to those things. And then if we want to debate tax increases, let's do it on the less popular stuff that we're not talking about.
Matt Hall is a candidate for the Republican nomination for the 63rd State House seat, currently occupied by State Representative Dave Maturen. The district encompasses some of the eastern townships of Kalamazoo County and some of the southern townships of Calhoun County, including darn near all of Emmett Township, where Matt lives currently. How long have you lived there?
I moved there recently. I really enjoy it. It's been great. I like it a lot.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, you worked for President Trump's campaign for Calhoun County. So
right, I was his delegate for Calhoun County.
Mm-hmm.
I was also his campaign chairman for this area, and I also wanted to mention I worked for Attorney General Bill Schuette's office for 4 years. I was his West Michigan liaison, and so in doing that, I represented his office. I worked on issues of preventing fraud against seniors and communicating the initiatives of the office and helping keep the public safe.
Matt Hall is a constitutional attorney who lives in Emmett Township and is challenging Dave Maturen for the 63rd State House Republican nomination. He worked on Trump's campaign quite a bit. And, I want to ask you the big question that I have. I like the fact that, first of all, I like constitutional lawyers a lot. I like the fact that Justin Amash is our guy, at least fighting for our rights and to make sure that the Constitution is preserved and not trampled on in Washington. I like the idea of having that in any government situation, but I also like the idea of having a truck driver, a school teacher, a doctor, a diverse, group of citizens going to Lansing to represent us, I guess what it comes down to is, do we want a legislature or a body that is of one mind that's going to work together to accomplish some of the Constitution or some of the main issues that we want, such as, we have right now with President Trump. Immigration's a huge issue. If we had enough people in the Congress that supported that right now, we could probably get a lot more work done more quickly. There's that side of it, but then there's the other side of people who say, I don't really want it to be that political. I just want people to make common sense decisions on what's right for the local community. So how do we balance that, and what are you going to bring to the legislature, as a constitutional lawyer?
I absolutely, unequivocally support Donald Trump, and the Republicans must stand behind him. He was elected in the landslide, and we must support him, and Republicans really should be doing what they said they were going to do. And I wish more Republicans had the courage to stand with President Trump. But you said, I'm a constitutional attorney. I'm running against a tax appraiser, right? And you go to the door and they're like, oh, we don't like attorneys. And it's like, well, there actually are very few attorneys in the legislature, which is kind of scary. People that actually know how to write laws. But I don't know. I think a tax appraiser might be worse. I'm not sure. But anyway.
Well, it's nice to have somebody in Lansing who understands all of that and can kind of explain it. I mean, in Dave's defense, he's been doing it a long time. He has worked at the township level. He's worked at the county level in government. He's got a lot of experience with these kind of appraisal issues. He knows the laws that we've passed and, what's good about them and what's bad about them. How can that be a bad thing?
Well, the way I sum this race up is you've got one guy who's part of the establishment, who's been a government, bureaucrat or elected official for over 30 years, and the way he really views this job is representing local governments. That's how he views the job. I view the job as representing people, individuals, and that's a significant difference because when you try to represent local governments and counties, they're really in existence to grow their tax base. And as individuals, our response, we want to see them be more efficient. We want to see reduction in tax base. And so to me, that's a significant difference. And I would rather have a representative who represents people. And then I'll say, one example of where a constitutional attorney can really help our state is look at this civil asset forfeiture bill. David Maturen votes no. on this bill, and this bill, all it would have done is prevent the government, the local government, the police, from being able to take your assets from you without a criminal conviction. This is a violation of due process, and due process is important. If if you're accused of a crime and the government takes your property, that's not only taking your property, it's depriving you of your liberty, because how are you going to defend yourself in court? And that's wrong. Maturen should not have voted for that. And constitutional conservatives would have voted yes to repeal that, because that was wrong.
You bring up due process down at our southern border. It's a national issue, but immigrants are coming across. They are finding their way into the United States. Some people say, well, hey, the courts have clearly said that those people also should get due process under our law, but it seems like the administration may be denying them that. What's your thought about that?
Well, I think we need to absolutely enforce our immigration law in this country, and Donald Trump is doing that. And we absolutely need to build a wall. And the Congress really needs to act. I mean, in a lot of these areas we saw with the separation of families, I mean, the Congress is not acting. And that's unacceptable. We pay, so much money for this government to function, and these guys don't do their job. And one more thing I want to pivot to is, in Michigan, we really need a part-time legislature. I mean, these politicians, they work 3 days a week. They make $72,000 a year, and then they go away for the summer. And we need to get them away from the lobbyists, and we need to get them back home where they're talking to constituents and actually representing people. And so that's a major contrast between Maturen and I. I think we need a part-time legislature. He doesn't.
Do you also support term limits?
I do, yeah. I think term limits are important. I would be open to looking at other options for term limits, but I think we need term limits, because once these politicians get entrenched for too long, I think they become less accountable to people also.
But the argument, Matt, is that the bureaucrats will have more power if we have a part-time legislature, or because of term limits they already do, and these are people who have no accountability because they're never elected by anybody.
Yeah, that's something that is we need to look at, and I heard Dave Maturen say that the Treasury Department wrote a bill on tax appraising without even talking to him, you know, and so I guess that goes for the current influence he has right now. I mean, but we need to look at how to rein in the bureaucracy. We need to fund constituent services, but I want to see a part-time legislature.
Okay, but if we do go to that, how are we going to balance it so that the people who aren't up there working as staffers for 30 and 40 years aren't actually running the ship?
Well, we're going to have to look at regulating that and passing laws to do that.
How could we find out more about Matt Hall and the campaign?
Yeah, my website is electmatthall.com. You can go on there, and everything I talk about here I cite on there, so you can learn more about me there.
All right, great. We'll do that. Matt, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again in the future. 6 weeks until the primary.
Thank you.